This is the Real Change Wilmington podcast, episode 30, inside the Clinton County Port Authority with our guest today, Alex Beres.
My parents had extra land, and they finally saved up the money to build a new house that I moved into in high school. And I remember, drinking water from the faucet, and it was the first time I ever could do that. And it's because of infrastructure coming out to the thing. So, those kind of things are like, you don't know how that's going to affect you growing up, but man, it's kind of incredible because you go, oh, I know exactly what economic community development means to a household.
What is going on, everybody? This is your host of the Real Change Wilmington podcast, Dustin Pierce.
And I'm Emily Griffith, the co-host.
And if you have not tuned into Real Change before, we are a positive, constructive, and lighthearted source of local news, events, and resources. And on our podcast, we interview leaders of local organizations to help squash rumors and just foster a greater sense of community in Wilmington. So this is our 30th episode, Emily. We've come a long way. Had a lot of guests.
The Dirty 30.
The Dirty 30. So I just want to take a second to recap, what we're doing here. But before we do that, Emily, it'd be impolite of me not to ask how your weekend was.
My weekend was all right. I spent some time with my mom and my brother in Chillicothe, and then just kind of chillaxed at my house and sadly missed Cyclone's opening night. What about you? How was your weekend?
It was good. My sister invited me to go to a haunted house, actually down by the Cyclones, USS Nightmare. And at first I did not want to go, but then I'm like, I guess it'll be some good trauma bonding with my family. So I haven't been to a haunted house in over a decade, and I was kind of scared, but I got over it. And now I'm a big boy who can handle haunted houses. I did think of you, though, when I was driving past the Cyclones game. I was like, Emily should have been there.
I know. It's a real shame. I was looking at Ticketmaster, though, and it looks like they had a pretty full house.
Really?
So I'm sure it was a rowdy, but...
I'm sorry you didn't get to go.
I know. How many fights did I miss?
So let's just, before we get into Alex's podcast, let's just recap kind of how Real Change Wilmington got started and what we're doing here. So 2 summers ago, I noticed some people in front of Kroger panhandling. Didn't like that per se, didn't like them being there, and also didn't like them, needing help and wanting to help them, and didn't want our community to be taken advantage of by people panhandling because I did know there's resources available. So I wanted to educate our community as well. Originally, we were going to just put up signs that say no panhandling, and there's a better way to give, direct them to a website where they can access resources. And that kind of morphed into a podcast, a paper, a website, an app.
And our social medias. How could you
forget I'm so
those?
Sorry. I'm not on social media, so I just forget they exist.
Uh-huh.
So in addition to wanting to help people who are in need with resources, we wanted to kind of address some of the grumbling too that kind of happens when there's gossip and people don't know what's going on. So that's why we wanted to do these interviews, initially with Sugar Tree Ministries, and asking the hard questions, but asking them in a way that's positive, constructive, and lighthearted, that kind of values the relationship and doesn't want to just burn the place to the ground. And I think that, we started out wanting to cause change, but I think we were a little bit changed too, which has helped. Emily's shaking her head. Do you think you've been changed, Emily?
Oh, yes. That's why I talked to Lee about it the other day. Mm. It's like you go into all of this with all these notions, what you see online, what you hear in the community. But homelessness generally is something that people don't know how to handle. They're unsure of how to learn how to handle it.
People who are not homeless like us?
People in homes.
Okay.
I don't know what the correct term for that is. But,
the rich, the elite. I'm just kidding.
The privileged. And when we sat down with Lee, there was a lot of negative thought to it, and we talked forever. And then now I feel like just learning to understand and hear people's story and how they view it from their perspective has really changed a lot of my outlook on what's going on in Wilmington.
Yeah. The other thing that is our mantra is that we are a community of empowered individuals. To be honest, that just started as something that fit on the website. Filler text. But I think that's really become our mantra because you and I are just 2 dorks who have the character and the courage and humility to ask questions to people and to listen to their answers and to be changed. Want to cause change, but also to be changed and to value relationships. So people all the time say oh, you should interview this person or that person, or you should be doing this or that. And it's guys, we're just 2 dorks with full-time day jobs. and life's outside of this. And this is something that we just do because we live here and love the place that we live. So we're trying to like model that we're a community of empowered individuals so that if you see something that you want to do, like just do it like we're doing, And if it becomes too much, then stop doing it. So any thoughts on that, Emily?
No, sums it up.
It sums it up, does it?
Yeah, I mean, we all have the initiative to take action where we want to take action, and it's nobody's responsibility but your own if you're doing it.
There you go. Preach it, Emily. Preach it. Hands up. All right. So that's just a little bit of kind of background about Real Change Wilmington. I think we need to continue to say who we are, what we're doing so people know
And we're 30 episodes in. So let's bring in Alex at the Port Authority. He's a really cool dude. And I think he's going to do a really good job as the executive director of the Port Authority. And without further ado, let's bring in Alex. Alex, welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. Appreciate it.
How do you say your last name?
Beres.
Beres?
Yeah.
I think I want to say it like Beres or something like cool. But like,
well, when we played T-ball, when I was a little kid, it was different every time. So it'd be Beres, 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 never Beres. So
Beres.
Yeah, Beres. Yeah.
All right. So tell us about, where did you grow up at?
Grew up outside of Norwalk, Ohio, which is northern Ohio. If you guys, if anybody's been to Cedar Point, usually drive through. One of the ways you get there is driving through Norwalk, but grew up out in the country and well for water and wood stove for heat, and pretty rural thing. Grew up on a river and fished a lot and all that stuff. So kind of similar sized town to Wilmington, so county seat type of place. And yeah, great place to grow up.
What county is that?
Huron County.
Huron?
Huron.
Huron.
With an H.
Yeah. So we're gonna like dig in a bit to your background, just so people know who you are, because you are new to the area.
Yep.
So what were some of the defining moments in your childhood that made you who you are?
Oh, I mean, definitely growing up in the kind of rural hinterlands. It's like doing a lot of hard work outside, chopping wood, mowing grass for hours. Those who know me now know that I am like completely adverse to mowing lawns, and that's because I did all the hours that should ever be taken mowing lawns from 7 to 18 in my life. Fishing, doing those things, and then there's a bunch of different things, but I remember specifically I mentioned a well for water. And the well wasn't great for drinking. The water, the aquifer area wasn't that great. And I remember riding with my dad, and we went out, I probably was like in 4th or 5th grade, and he went to the neighbors with a couple of other neighbors, one of the neighbors, and they all signed up or petitioned and signed up to get rural water, there's rural water cooperatives all throughout the country, but in Northern Ohio, it's called Northern Ohio Rural Water. And it was meant to get basic drinking water lines out to rural areas. And I just thought that was so cool, just in the same way as back in the 30s, they had rural electric, where there wasn't, obviously that's a bigger deal. But so, just multiple things kind of really interest me in development and infrastructure, but also for places that hadn't seen it. So I kind of like, when we moved into a new house, which was right next door to our old house, my parents had extra land, and they finally saved up the money to build a new house that I moved into in high school. And I remember, drinking water from the faucet, and it was first time I ever could do that. And it was because of infrastructure coming out to the thing. So, those kind of things are like, you don't know how that's going to affect you growing up, but man, it's kind of incredible because you go, oh, I know exactly what economic community development means to a household. So that was really cool. Yeah. And, other things, always been, even though I've generally been in public sector, always been kind of entrepreneurial. My buddies and I were in our own rock and roll band and recorded our own CDs. I was asking you earlier about your setup, and this was back before really it was recording to cassette tape, but it was a 8-track Tascam for anybody that knows. And
hold on, do you have any of those songs still? Can we use those for intro and outro music for your episode? Dang.
You'll never get those from me. It was a worthy effort, but it was great fun. But we sold our own albums, got a couple paying gigs and figured out how to make money, doing creating stuff. And so, that's another thing that's always been kind of a cool thing. You never know how that would affect you, but I still to this day, thinking of ways to bring revenue in, make things happen, make different projects happen.
What did you play in the band?
Guitar. Singing is a very generous term, but we all took parts and sing. But no, I played a lot of guitar in high school, and it was that was another thing. It's just taught myself how to play and got pretty good, and just kind of an incredible thing that you don't have to have like a set course in life. If you really like something, you'll just get into it and be able to learn on your own. So that's probably the first thing that I ever taught myself how to do, and now damn near everything. You're just constantly teaching yourself how to do things and learning and evolving, and that was really my first step. So that's probably some of the really fun things.
And you mentioned, so we had a tour with you yesterday of the airpark, and you mentioned that you met your wife in high school.
Yeah.
So did she come to one of your concerts or something, and then one of your early
that's an incredible question. So actually, it's funny. We met at first, and then I asked her out on a date much later after we first met, and her parents were pretty strict with her other sister. She was the youngest of three daughters, and my now in-laws were always very strict about their girls going on dates with boys, and for some reason I didn't I didn't get the full parent treatment. Like, they just let me pick Jamie up, and we went on a little high school date that was pretty innocent stuff. And later on, it came out that actually her parents liked my guitar playing. Go, well, anybody that can play good guitar like that, and is also I think I played basketball. I was on the varsity basketball team. They're like, he seems like a good enough guy, and he plays really good guitar, so sure. And so anyway, my wife still can care less about my guitar playing, but it got me in with my in-laws. Yeah.
Wow.
So what kind of music did you play?
Mostly rock and roll, classic rock to kind of from Pink Floyd, Led Zeppelin, James Gang stuff, all the way to like Jane's Addiction, Perry Farrell, Radiohead type stuff. It was really fun. Yeah, we loved it.
Did you ever make your own song?
We did. Yeah, we would make a lot of our own songs. They're all pretty bad, but like good efforts for 17-year-olds. Yeah, it's really fun.
So you moved here in 2019, is that right? Or
no. Moved here to Wilmington, Clinton County area just this year.
And you said that you had your daughter here, right?
Yep, Clinton Memorial. Yep, over Easter weekend. So first kid. My wife and I have been married for a long time and just always traveling around for jobs and other things. And we spent most of our life in central and northern Ohio. But the previous 3 years to right now, I got a chance to work in the office of the Secretary for the United States Department of Transportation, working on the new infrastructure law, what's now the bipartisan infrastructure law, which was really great, cool experience. But we got the great news that my wife was pregnant, and we're like, we better get home to a support system and have family and other things that we can kind of share her growing up with. So that's what ultimately brought me. I was looking for the right fit, and the challenges and opportunity directing the Port Authority just really stood out to me. So that's ultimately how I got here.
Nice. So what do you like most about Wilmington? What have you found the most charming over your time here?
Definitely it's, the small town charm of I'm at Weather Vane picking up my dry cleaning, and the people I'm in line with just naturally like, oh, hey, they see my airpark badge or something else like that, and like, oh, like, what do you do, or where do you work, or what's that? And I get to talk and get to talk to people in a Columbus or even definitely in a D.C. You can be in line with people for a half hour and they basically stare at their phones and stuff, and people genuinely are like, oh, you must be new, or something, and they take a general interest in that. That's just that kind of one-to-one personality thing is just kind of incredible. It's great that it's still that culture is still here. It's definitely eroded a lot of other places.
Yeah, I lived in Columbus for a while too, and I like the same thing, that small town charm. You know, people. It's like your whole community is like your actual community, not just people that you live in the city with. So
yeah, right. No, so that's that's really incredible, and just a lot of the people that have so much history here and how much impact one person or a group of people can have on a small town is really incredible.
So I was looking through your LinkedIn profile, and it looked like your first economic development role was at the Huron County Development Council.
Home county.
Oh yeah, sure.
Yeah.
And then later on, you went to Franklin County, which is Columbus, and you told us a story about the well water and stuff, the infrastructure. Yeah. Is that what sparked your interest in economic development?
Yeah, I had an uncle who, for a time, worked in economic development. I remember him talking about he worked for the state of Ohio under the Voinovich administration, and I remember there was a Whirlpool factory really close to where we lived in Clyde, Ohio. If I grew up in Norwalk, just down Route 20 is Clyde. And I think I'm well past the statute of limitations to be able to talk about this now. That's my joke leading into it. But the point is that he came up with my aunt, and we were having a thing, but it's like, really, Uncle Joe's here because he's having top secret meetings with Whirlpool because they're thinking about leaving. They're thinking about actually pulling up and leaving. And he worked with the rest of his colleagues at the state to make sure that there was the right incentive structure and other things, and barriers were kind of lifted to allow Whirlpool to not only stay but expand in Clyde rather than move out of state. And I thought that was incredible. You know, that was like almost being a spy or something to me when I was 7. So that's another great kind of thing of how to get into economic development is having a family member that's actually part of it. So I got hired as the executive director of the Huron County Development Council, and it was March of 2009, which was the height of the Great Recession. Obviously, that was tough times here, and we'll obviously get into it in terms of the history of DHL leaving the Wilmington airpark, but the same time in Huron County, we were kind of neck and neck in terms of unemployment rate with Clinton County, where I took over. I had just turned 25, and Huron County was at 18.3% unemployment, which is, I mean, other than having the blips on the pandemic, it changed the whole economic landscape of Huron County. It was really tough. You walk into factories that were shutting down that you'd see parents of your friends, and they kind of knew you're walking through with state officials, probably it's bad news. And it was just a devastating time. I can't, there's no way to sugarcoat it. It was a tough way to get into economic development, but I realized how important it was to try to retain and help the jobs that are here. You want to leverage them, keep them going, and also expand whenever you can. So, I mean, that's the downside of dealing with economic downfall. So in the same way, Huron County was very similar to Clinton County. It's just Clinton County had one employer leave, and Huron County had probably 6. That aggregate total kind of came close to what happened in Clinton County. So it's, that was tough to come in during. That'll always define me being a young professional in the Great Recession. It was tough finding work, tough for everybody. So yeah, that's a kind of another defining moment there.
Yeah, something that I appreciate about you or respect about you is that you now live in Wilmington or live in the area. Yeah. So like the decisions that you're making are not going to just affect people who live there, but they're going to affect you also.
Absolutely.
So
absolutely.
That's,
Yeah. I mean, we really wanted to, we live out, outside of town in the country. And, I always loved growing up out in the rural area, but still by rural, it's nice coming into town, going to a Kroger, and doing your shopping. Rural means something a lot different in Wyoming or somewhere else.
Sure.
So you still get some, but you still got the modern conveniences, but it's just beautiful countryside out here.
Yeah. So can you, before we get into the Port Authority, can you just walk us through maybe some highlights in your career up till now?
Sure. So I talked about first job in economic development being in my home county, but then really a fortunate thing. I got hired as basically like an economic development management position in Franklin County in 2013. It was just right when Central Ohio had finally started to ramp back up and had some growth happening, and was fortunate to get hired by a gentleman named Jim Shimmer. Franklin County still is there, wonderful man. And he really gave me a lot of ownership and opportunity to provide me a lot of trust to get into things that as a younger person, maybe other people didn't get that kind of opportunity. And I just ran with it. And at that first stint with with Franklin County, did a couple different initiatives. The thing I'm most proud of is I started the Franklin County Infrastructure Bank, which was a loan program where the commissioners would lend their own funds back to other municipalities for water, road, other kinds of infrastructure projects that helped economic development. And that was really cool and got me into a lot of different projects. In between my time, I came back to Franklin County. I can get to that, but I was in private consulting for 3 years with a great company called MS Consultants, a family-owned engineering firm. Still love those guys and still very close to everybody there. Got me throughout the state and outside of the state to see all kinds of development projects and how infrastructure and development is funded in other places, other regions, other cities, other states. Incredible. Got lured back. Franklin County created a new position, Assistant Director of Economic Development. They had never had that position before. And so I got hired back to do that. And that's really in the wave of, we did the first strategic plan for Franklin County. Also worked with a colleague who now we have the pleasure of having here as our economic development director, Josh Roth. Worked with Josh as well on creating an affordable housing framework for Franklin County, which was really cool. Put a lot of dollars focused on transit corridors. So that was really cool. During my second time at Franklin County, I had the opportunity to get my master's degree from Johns Hopkins, their School of Government. And it was a hybrid program. It was in D.C. sometimes for long weekends or weeks. And a lot of it was online before online was cool and, whatever. And then I did my thesis on infrastructure development. That sounds really boring, but it was a lot of fun for me. Got me in front of a lot of people and really exposed me to national and international development. Through that, had the chance to have a position in the Office of the Secretary. Really, at Department of Transportation for the United States, there's a bunch of different modes. There's Federal Highway Administration, there's Federal Aviation Administration, there's all these different modes. Office of the Secretary really oversees all those different modes. And with the new infrastructure law, just had hundreds of billions of dollars of discretionary funds that the Secretary is in charge of making selections on, and got to work on that. And
that was in D.C., right?
That was in D.C. So spent, 2.5, 3 years doing that in D.C. And it was incredible. When I walked home from work, I walked past the Capitol building and all that stuff. And, I've had, I know everyone's kind of joking with me, but I had some people here in Clinton County rib me that I worked for the dark side when I was in Washington, D.C. But I encourage it for everybody. It's all of our country. It's our national capital. And it really gives you, it wasn't going to be a lifetime thing for me or my wife. We knew this is a great opportunity, but it wasn't a sustainable thing that we could do forever. But I just took advantage of it and just had a great time. We saw all the sites. We were tourists, but also got to work on some incredible projects. Got to see the funding finally get done for like the Brent Spence Bridge here in Cincinnati, which is always essentially six presidents have all said they were going to get this done, and it's nice to see that get done. So so that was really cool. And then obviously back here where I am today.
That's a lot of stuff.
Sorry. Yeah.
No, that's all right. It's just great.
It's great. Just where I've been, man.
Yeah. So can you tell us now about the history of the Port Authority, but start with the history of the airpark itself, I guess?
Yeah, the history of the airpark was originally a military airbase. It's kind of funny. people here locally, you know, who, if they did or their family, when they or their family worked at the airpark, by how they refer to it. So if people worked way back in the day or had family, mom or dad or somebody worked way back in the day, they'll still refer to it as the airbase. That's because it was a military installation, and that was a going concern until the military left in the early 70s, and that was devastating to the community. So Wilmington's kind of had, and I don't know how much you guys are aware of this kind of history or not.
I'm aware of what the website says.
Yeah, but so there's different generations that have seen the peaks and valleys of the airpark. So that left. Eventually, a company called Airborne Express bought the airbase, turned it into a private air cargo shipping parcels. They became the third largest, private air cargo company, and did that really well. There are still people that work at the airpark today that worked for years for Airborne Express when they owned the airpark. Then they sold to DHL, the German company, for DHL being for their domestic air cargo shipments in the early 2000s. And then by the financial recession time, DHL decided to move out of Wilmington. And that was a loss of 8,000 jobs in the late 2000s pretty quickly. Now obviously the airpark's always employed people farther than just Clinton County. It's really always been the regional jobs hub for an entire, 3-4 county region. But 8,000 jobs leaving a county of a total of 42,000 people, I mean, that's just unheard of in terms of size and magnitude. So, there's still a lot of them here today that I've gotten to meet, but some wonderful public officials made sure that DHL would actually donate the airpark back to the people. And the Port Authority had been created a few years before for a financial transaction. It kind of been dormant mostly since then, but the Port Authority was put forward as to receive and own the airpark. And that was in 2010. Clinton County Port Authority has owned Wilmington Airpark now for 13 plus years. It was a pretty relatively empty place in 2010. Now it's back at 4,600 plus employees. Number one air cargo hub in the state of Ohio, 24th most tonnage of air cargo flown out in the United States. I mean, just an incredible generator of economic activity again, but with a lot of history and a lot of people, different people. When I talk about standing in line at Weather Vane and waiting for my dry cleaning, different people refer to it as, oh yeah, you're out there at DHL, or oh, you're out at Airborne, or you're out at the airbase. And that's all just a really interesting layer cake of how people locally have interacted with the airpark before. Emily, you talked about working there in 2020 for a company that's not aviation related, and one of our tenants, and it's like that's your employment history there. But everybody has their different level, and when you're employing that thousands of people out at one place, you're just going to have a lot of really interesting connections to it. One thing I'll say that's amazing though is how many people locally don't know what's going on there. Mm-hmm. And that's something we're trying to work on. Having you guys out there yesterday was really good, because I don't know, I'm not putting you on the spot. I don't know how much you knew about it in terms of where it was today.
It is confusing. It was confusing to me because when I think of the airpark, I assumed it was like all the businesses around it too, like on Progress Way, all those factory buildings, that it just included all of that.
Right.
And I knew it was DHL. I knew it was Airborne Express, and I knew it was Amazon. So to see it and walk through it, like I kind of grasp it more clearly.
Yeah,
now, I guess.
And so it's something that honestly, at the Port Authority, we're interested in a kind of initiative I'm interested in and continuing to do, is that people listening, people interested, we'd love to give you a tour, love to show you around, because, for the airpark, we apply for state grants. We try to be competitive in other things, try to be competitive in learning companies there and stuff. Well, how are we supposed to sing our song and advocate for that area if people locally aren't our biggest advocates as well? And that's not because they're detractors. It's just simply because they don't know, they haven't been out there in a while. They've never been out there. And so it's something we'd like to do and love to do at some point next year, a community event where we can, just have a day where people know they can come out and see the sites and get even more in depth than maybe even what we did yesterday.
Yeah. Isn't there, this is a random off topic a little bit, isn't there like a go-kart place right next to you or something on the airpark? Or
it's not on the airpark.
Not on the airpark,
it's north of it. And I'll be honest, I haven't been here long enough to exactly know exactly.
Yeah, I've been here for a few years, and I just recently came across it one day. I was like, what the heck is this like go-kart track? I guess some local business owner.
There's some really interesting. There's always some interesting interesting things going on in and around. Give me when I come back in a couple of years, I'll tell you how the track goes.
All right, awesome. Okay, so we covered the history. So for my own clarification, Airborne Express no longer exists there, right?
Airborne Express no longer exists, but a remnant of Airborne Express had always been there even after it was sold to DHL. And that company is now a holding company called ATSG. ATSG is still our credit tenant. Yes, Amazon is another important story to Wilmington Airpark. They're the ones that are bringing in 12 really heavy loaded planes of cargo in and out every night. That gives that runway its life again. But ATSG is always been headquartered out at Wilmington. They're a NASDAQ publicly traded company. To have a company of that stature and that has so many locations across the country and also has relationships with airlines throughout the world, headquartered in Wilmington is another incredible story, kind of truly hidden gem, even though a lot of people know about them. And so that's really through their leadership and the Port Authority scraping by early on and making sure that they could have lines of business out there. They've continued to grow, and that's another incredible story. I mean, that's where a lot of that employment comes from, is from all the different ATSG companies out there. So you might hear different acronyms, but a lot of them are under that ATSG company holding. And they're an incredible credit tenant to us and a partner in everything we do.
ATSG, are they the hangar you showed us that does the repairs?
Yes,
that converts?
That's one of their lines of business out there. Yeah,
and they have more than that, then.
Yeah, more than that.
Oh, wow,
they're the largest lessor, meaning they own and then lease to other airlines freight cargo planes, jet planes that haul freight. They're the largest lessor of those in the world. They convert airplanes to cargo airplanes. They do maintenance. All kinds of aviation related businesses they do right there in Wilmington, Ohio.
So they were like taking the windows off of passenger planes and boarding those up so they can be used as a freight plane, stuff like that.
And doing all kinds of, cutting a big freight compartment hole on the side. And it's really kind of an amazing thing when you see some of these Amazon Air or other different planes. If you look really hard, you can see kind of like, oh, that might have been a former passenger plane, but it's in terms of cool recycling thing on top of it too. You got a plane that's gone out of use in terms of being a passenger plane that still is a great vehicle for hauling the packages that we open every day when they get dropped off at our houses.
Yeah. So in general, what do port authorities do? Like, I think the concept goes back like centuries when just like seaports, right? But now it's more than that. So what do they do?
Yeah, that's a great question. Port authorities do a lot of things. It's actually sometimes easier to say what the port authorities not do, because they can run so many lines of public business. I'd say they're really a public business in that they run things that, like a seaport or an airport or a transit company or a railroad line, or leasing buildings or building buildings. They do a bunch of different things, but under a lot of the laws of political subdivision. In the state of Ohio, they were originally formed for the history nerds out there after World War II in the early 50s. The United States and Canada had gotten together to open up the St. Lawrence Seaway to actually have a passageway for freight ships to come in and out from the Atlantic Ocean all the way into the Great Lakes. And to anticipate that, the state of Ohio created Port Authority law to allow for places like Toledo and Cleveland, Lorraine on the lakes to operate Port Authority and have certain laws that still keep them within the public authority, meaning, appointed by either a city or a county or both in terms of appointment of the board and control of that board. But then certain powers that are more associated with a business corporation. So the ability to lease buildings and the ability to do financing and the ability to make transactions in a kind of quick and efficient process. Eventually, because of those original port authorities, they just became a very efficient and convenient way for local governments to do economic development projects, whether it's redeveloping a property or owning assets like we do here in Wilmington for the airpark and leasing them out. And so they become a much more commonplace tool for economic development throughout the state of Ohio. So a lot of times you'll have port authorities that don't own any kind of port, don't own an airport, don't own a seaport, but they work as the main economic development agency for their county or city, helping to retain businesses that are there or lure businesses in, redevelop or develop land, bring infrastructure out there. So they're used in a multitude of ways, but they've really become kind of commonplace as an economic development tool in the state of Ohio.
So how is a port authority more efficient? Like, can cities and counties not own properties and lease them out?
They can, but a lot of things have to, for a county or city, usually you go through bid processes and other things, because counties and cities really generally aren't in the quote business of running an asset or running something for, to lease out for revenue and things like that. Whereas a port authority is a lot easier to just manage public assets. So a perfect example I always use, because it's the most really historic port in the state of Ohio, is the Toledo Lucas County Port Authority. They run they lease out and a lot of the land along the Long River Bay that brings in sea shipments of grains and raw material from the lakes, from the Great Lakes, but they also oversee the Toledo Airport and other things, all done for the benefit of the public there in Lucas County and Toledo, but with the powers that make it a little bit easier to actually run those businesses. And so you see that in all the different airports and seaports. Some railroads are owned by port authorities, short line railroads. Mm-hmm. It's just a way for the public to participate in private business activities.
So do businesses not need to like put bids in and stuff when they want to do something with you? You could just make a decision to like a business would? Yeah,
it's still controlled by, we still put things through and get approval from our Port Authority board. Mm-hmm. It's done in public meetings. Everything that has the control of any kind of government, it's just the ability to do it a lot quicker.
I see. Okay. Very cool. So can you talk about maybe who some of your tenants are?
Yeah.
So the public can know, like.
Yeah, absolutely. So ATSG, which is headquartered, I was talking about, NASDAQ publicly traded company headquartered here in Wilmington, and that means headquartered at the airpark. They do a tremendous amount of aviation business, really become a league leader in freight jets that specialize in freight and cargo shipments. We also have Amazon Air that's been here for a number of years that, as I was saying before, but ships a tremendous amount of cargo in and out of the Wilmington Airpark, similar to what's been done at the airpark for years and years. Their presence makes it so that we are the league leader in the state of Ohio in terms of air cargo. No airport in the state of Ohio does more cargo shipments than the Wilmington Airpark in terms of the actual tonnage weight that comes in and out of the airpark. Another is GA Telesis, which is another aviation-related international company that does a higher-end engine repair out there. We have a number of different other subsidiary businesses and companies that lease different space, airlines. Just an incredible array of to bottom aviation related companies there. So really cool mix, some hidden gems out there that people, unless they know, don't know. It's really incredible.
Can you talk about how the Marvel movies were filmed out at Amazon?
Is that a thing?
I can't speak publicly about that. No. Yeah, one of the Marvel movies was filmed out there. We still have a few remnants of that movie.
We didn't see that on our tour? What were we doing?
No, we didn't see it on that tour. No, it's kind of underwhelming. So
okay.
I don't want people to think that,
Iron Man's there.
Yeah, the actual Iron Man is there. The Iron Man is not there. So,
okay. Right on.
Thanks, Emily, for at least saying.
I had to. I'm sorry.
No, I'm glad you did. Yeah.
One thing that you mentioned on the tour is that there's two different runways, and then there's like what road is it? It's like Airborne Road. Like
Airborne Road goes in
between the two runways. There's a taxi above them or something.
Yeah. So when people drive on Airborne Road, really the main entrance to get into any of the businesses in the airpark, they're on Airborne Road, and you'll go under two different large overpasses, and both of those actually are taxiways that a jet plane can go over to reach either runway. They're on both sides of Airborne Road. The runway to the south is not currently being used because there just isn't the need to, but it's another great giant runway. I mean, the air park, another thing that's kind of hard to get through people's heads is the runways are as big as any large commercial airport in the country. And so we can land pretty much anything in terms of size. And so, continuing to find users that want to use that kind of airport is another, goal of ours. And yeah, it's pretty incredible, just the size of that, just to not even kind of hard to imagine when you're just going under those overpasses that you're literally driving basically through an airfield.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
You said that part was closed. And then I had the question about like, what does it take to maintain, and our runway and things. One thing that you said was unique about our air park is that the runway is like concrete as opposed to asphalt.
Yeah. I mean, the main runway was built for, World War II. And so just incredibly deep, solid concrete. And so incredibly tolerant of the kind of use that it's gotten over the years, but also unique to repair. And we basically, they're 25 by 25 foot squares. And, if you come to a meeting, it seems really boring because we'll talk about, we have different taxiways and different letters for different ramps and different taxiways and stuff like that. But you'll hear something like, oh, we're repairing, going to do a full replacement of A1 or A7. Well, that's a ramp that's one whole square that we're replacing, or two whole squares we're replacing. And we try to do that kind of square by square every year as just a good best practice for maintenance to make sure that that runway keeps on being in tip-top shape.
How does the repairs work? Because airplanes are still landing there, so they have to just move over a little bit when they land, or like?
Yeah, so the actual runway, we usually don't touch as much. That's in really good shape.
Oh, okay.
But we'll do, if we are doing repairs on the runway, we'll do it at times when planes aren't flying and be very nimble and efficient to where, hey, part of the work gets done, you make it, and then so that airplanes keep on going. Other things will take, we'll just have, maybe you'll have to taxi a different way, but if it's off the taxi to the ramp, just basically like any other highway repair, you just drive a little slower and go around it. Yeah.
Nice. So what are some of the improvements that the Port Authority has made to the air park recently? And then what are some things that you're planning to do?
Yeah. So, one thing is that we've worked through the state to get brownfield remediation dollars, environmental dollars to clean up some of the remaining available land at the air park. So as part of a military installation, there was a historic shooting range at the end of the one runway. There's kind of a mound, and I don't think I even mentioned it, but it's kind of weird to give a tour to people and go, hey, there's an old mound. But it's not that interesting to say. There's just a mound of dirt. But that was an old shooting range. And so we got grant dollars to remove all the lead and remediate it so that that site can be certified by the state of Ohio as a basically it's called Side Ohio, and it's a very good designation to companies and developers looking for land, whether they're in an airport or not, but looking for land to develop on. So that's been part of that process. Also, our operating partner, the folks that do a tremendous job for us doing the day-to-day operations of the airpark, a company called Logistics, is opening what's called an FBO, fixed based operator, but really it's a kind of like a small airport terminal for private general aviation jet travel. And so we've seen an uptick in just private, passenger travel for events like that are held at the World Equestrian Center, or for various business executives that are flying in for companies here in Clinton County or even in the surrounding counties to fly in and choose Wilmington Airpark as a place to fly into. And then they have now they have a much nicer way to basically get taxied off the runway, be able to wait for things, schedule stuff, and get off the airport in a very efficient manner through one building, which the FBO will now be located in what people historically referred to as the Welcome Center. It was just simply the Welcome Center for Airborne and DHL. That's now another great reuse of existing building space out there. So that's really exciting. We'd love to see, more general passenger travel in there. We're not necessarily in no way have any plans for like an airline to fly out of there or anything. Obviously, we're kind of centrally located where there's a lot of different United, American, Allegiant, all these other things that fly out of Cincinnati, Dayton, Columbus. But for that kind of private jet travel, love to have more people in. And so that's a really exciting development. Yeah. So, just continuing to make sure that we're moving forward on making more sites available, getting more people interested in landing at the airpark is all stuff that we're working for and working towards. At the end of the day, we want to have more flights coming in and out of the airpark. That's what really makes it a vibrant airport into the future. And that's what we're continuing to do.
Is there a landing fee people have to pay when they touch down? Is that how that works? Okay.
Yeah, there's a landing fee if you park, if you leave your airplane there for a couple of days, just like a parking garage. You pay a parking fee. Yeah. And yes. We have jet fuel that we offer, just like a gas station. And so, so there's a lot of, just like saying before, of course,
services and amenities for people.
Yeah. The airpark is owned by a public entity, the Port Authority, but it offers business services to people flying in. And that's how we generate, that's part of the way we generate revenue to maintain the assets there, as well as lease revenue from companies leasing the buildings. So all of that, there's never a line of tax dollars. We don't have a property tax or a sales tax or an income tax that supports the airpark. It comes from what the airpark generates. It's a business.
Yeah. In that room, is it called FTO? Is that what you said?
FBO. Fixed based operator.
Fixed base. Okay, so FBO. Is there like snack machines and like couches and stuff, like showers and things? Okay.
Sure. Yeah. Come on by.
All right.
If you're not getting out of a plane, I'm not sure what else you're going to do.
No, I was just wondering, like for people coming in and out.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, no, it's not.
Read the paper
really,
and stuff.
Yeah, it's a pretty far place to just hang out, but it's a nice little spot for people coming in and out.
Right on. I had a follow-up question to that. So let me think what the heck it was. Oh, I think you mentioned yesterday that you have the fuel for the jet planes. Did you also say that like propeller planes cannot land there? Is that how that works?
They could. It's just they can't. We don't have fuel for them.
Okay, so they could, but they're not encouraged.
Clinton County Regional Airport, which is just the county airport for smaller planes, has that and provides that service, and so that's a pretty nice mix. Sometimes those smaller planes don't mix really well with we've got large jet planes landing, and so it's great to have that those two services offered in the county, but at two different runways. And so that's kind of cool.
Okay. Yeah, that's like when I take my kayak out on the lake, and there's also the speedboats going by too. It's kind of scary.
Yeah, exactly.
So let's move outside of the air park and talk about just the economic development in general.
Sure.
So what are some things that the Port Authority has done economic development wise in the county, and what are some projects you're planning or needs you're trying to address?
Yeah. So a few years ago, the Clinton County Commissioners, the City of Wilmington, the Wilmington Community Improvement Corporation, as well as the Clinton County Commission and Visitors Bureau were all generous enough to come together, choose the Port Authority as the one voice for economic development outside the fence and outside of our county for economic development for Clinton County. They provide funding for economic development outside the fence, and that is countywide. And so, we have an economic development director, Josh Roth, who works at the Port Authority, but really his main goal is to do economic development work throughout the county. We also, I participate that as well as the rest of my colleagues at the Port Authority. It's really a team approach, but Josh leads those efforts. And first and foremost is meeting with businesses already located here in Clinton County to make sure that they're not facing any barriers in terms of staying here, keeping employees that are here and functioning and thriving well, and also making sure we don't miss opportunities where maybe that company is looking to expand or do something else. We want to make sure all that businesses that are here stay here, do well, and expand if they can, retain them if we can. So that's the first point of business. Second, we have dollars to invest in revitalizing and repurposing buildings in downtown Wilmington under the DRIVE program. That's something that I'm sure we'll be back on. We have a project that we're working on right now that I can't talk about publicly, but great to talk about in the future in terms of doing strategic redevelopment in downtown Wilmington. And then also looking at infrastructure and sites that don't have existing buildings or development on it for things like industrial development as well as residential housing. Talking to residential housing developers. At this point, housing is as important as a development project here in Clinton County as industrial or commercial development, simply because we just don't have, I think it's a pain point for everyone in terms of rent prices and housing prices and just trying to find a place to live. We don't have the housing right now to accommodate all the folks that work here. And so we have a lot of people drive in from outside the county to work here. And so we're looking to work with that with housing as well as industrial location. The last thing that we do is we represent the county outside of the county in regional and statewide economic development initiatives. So the state of Ohio's private economic development group is called Jobs Ohio. They work through regional partners to do larger development. Clinton County is in the Dayton Development Coalition, that region, the Dayton region. And so we work all the time with folks in Dayton and folks at the state looking at industries that are looking to locate or looking for sites throughout the state of Ohio and looking to position Clinton County for those opportunities as well.
So the economic development piece, that was decided upon by a couple organizations in town.
Right.
Do they fund that as well? That piece of it?
Yeah, they are funders of that piece of it.
Okay.
Yeah. And so a lot of times you'll have different public or private groups represent counties or cities in economic development. This one's really unique and really powerful in that everyone's come together to be represented all by one voice in the Port Authority. So it presents a lot of strength that when we put forward initiatives or priorities through the region, that they go, hey, these guys aren't just working on their own behalf or for one group or another group or one city versus one village. No, we're representing the entire county.
So how does that work? So is that money like used to fund Josh's salary and also like projects too?
And yeah, for different projects or marketing or other stuff like that. Yeah, absolutely. So
interesting.
It's a really, and honestly, we all participate, all the staff participates in one way or another in economic development. So the Port Authority is going to be in one way or another involved in economic development throughout. And so this is just, that partnership is just really a nice stamp on approval of, yep, we're going out representing the entire county.
You mentioned housing, and you had some affordable housing projects under your belt in Columbus. What's the plan or the thoughts on housing in Clinton County?
Yeah, I mean, we commissioned, the Port Authority commissioned a housing study in 2021 that already identified that there was a tremendous amount of housing units that could be developed here, that there was a market for. One of the hard things when there hasn't been a lot of development of a certain kind, like say apartments or townhomes or whatever, sometimes it's hard to convince banks and institutions and developers that there is a market, because it's easier to say, hey, once you have an apartment building, we had 20 units and we have 60 people on the wait list, right? Well, that's pretty easy. You could probably build a lot more units and people will fill those, right? When there isn't that product at all, or, it's very hard to come by, you don't have that demand to quantify. And so even though we know that that demand exists, it's just trying to get some first movers here to make sure that you see, if you build it, they will actually be fully filled and then some. And so we're just starting to get more housing developers and interest in Wilmington and Sabina and the region in terms of in the county at large, in terms of coming here. The new Honda LG plant has definitely brought a lot of focus down from Columbus and developers there. And so it's working to make sure that we have strategic development that accommodates the folks that already live here, as well as, folks looking to move here for employment and opportunities.
Yeah. Is there anything like coming soon, or?
Can't really say that, but
sure.
Definitely a lot of interest and a lot of things that we're continuing to work on.
Yeah. It seems like a huge need. We just talked to Sherry McIntosh earlier this week, I guess.
Sure.
And she's like the head of the realtors in town.
Right.
We asked about affordable housing, and I guess that topic means different things to different people.
It does. Right.
But yeah, there's definitely a shortage of even houses on the market right now. It's like maybe 40 at this time in the whole county, I guess.
It's really thin. And I'll even say when we first moved here in February, I mean, there was just nothing to be able to rent or just get a foot in the door. Mm-hmm. We actually were in an Airbnb cabin in Cowan Lake for 2 months just to have some place within the county and close to work to live. And so even from my own experience, I mean, you talked about good to have somebody that moves here. Well, not just that lives here, to actually, okay, I got employment. I'm excited about a job here in Clinton County. It's hard to find a place to just rent, to just get, a lot of times people want to rent before they own, and it's tough. So I've gone through it myself and trying to find a good place to bring your first baby home to. So, it's difficult. Some that we're definitely focused on trying to fix in different ways.
So I know you've done a lot with like economic development and I guess making changes in different areas. One thing we ask people is, what does real change mean to you? So not just like our name and brand, but like in general, the concept of like having a real change somewhere.
Real change to me is hard. It is hard work to get anything done. I'm talking about anything you try to do to really change something or actually move something across the finish line. It is hard work. And knowing that it's going to take twists and turns, knowing that you need to plan proactively, not just think about it, plan, iterate, try different ideas, test things, try to go figure out as much as you can before even starting. And then starting and changing those things, it is hard, it's long, but it's worth it. And so there's these, maxims out there about think slow or plan slow and then act fast. Most people plan fast and then act slow. Meaning they're like, yeah, we're going to do this. And then they start doing it. And it's like runs into 10,000 roadblocks and you give up because it's too hard. It's planning and being just absolutely adamant that it's going to be hard.
Yeah.
I'm knowing that up front and planning for it and keeping on working on it and keeping on being tenacious at it is the way you get real change. It's not easy, but it's worth it.
Yeah, real change is hard, but it's worth it. So be committed.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Alex, for being on our podcast. Appreciate it.
Well, thank you guys. It was awesome. Awesome to have you out there, airpark. Anybody else is welcome.
Sweet. So that is it for our show today, folks. Thank you for listening and learning more about Alex and the Port Authority. If you have any more questions, please feel free to reach out to them because, again, we are a community of empowered individuals. Emily, if people want to know more about Real Change Wilmington, how would they do that?
You can go to our website, realchangewilmington.com. We have an app. We also have social media, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. You can check out all the cool things that we're doing around town.
Yeah, and again, our paper for October is out. So feel free to grab that and learn about all the cool real change happening in Wilmington. So with that, I'm Dustin Pierce.
And I'm Emily.
Keep it real, Wilmington.